Let's jump right into this explainer. We're unpacking a term you've probably seen literally everywhere online. Today, we're going to look past all the memes and try to figure out what the Sigma male label is actually trying to tell us about human behavior.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you just kinda don't fit the usual social ladder? Like, maybe you aren't the super loud, attention-grabbing leader type, but you definitely aren't a passive follower either. Honestly, it's a completely normal, very human feeling. So we're gonna explore how that genuine feeling of just being a bit different ended up fueling a massive internet trend. The goal here is to build a really wholesome understanding of why we actually crave these sorts of categories in the first place.
All right, Chapter 1, The Sigma Story.
Just to make sure we're all on exactly the same page here, let's look at the textbook definition. A Sigma male is defined as a man who is seen as independent, self-directed, and outside the usual social hierarchy. Now I know, that sounds super simple on the surface, right? Just someone doing their own thing. But as we're going to see, that idea of being outside the hierarchy carries a whole lot of hidden weight.
Moving on to Chapter 2, Why the Label Appeals.
So this concept really hooks us because it essentially does three heavy lifting jobs all at the exact same time. First off, it reduces social confusion. You don't have to explain why you're quiet or why you prefer flying solo. Second, it creates a distinct identity. It takes a simple behavior and makes it feel like this rich, full personality. And third, and honestly this is the big one, it offers status without direct competition. It acts as a safe, really easy shortcut that protects our dignity. If you're naturally a bit selective or private, well, the label flatters you. It basically suggests, hey, I don't need anyone's approval, so I'm actually above the usual game.
Which brings us to a quote that brilliantly illustrates the anchor of our entire explainer. A simple label can feel powerful because it turns uncertainty into identity. Let's face it, navigating social life is incredibly messy. It's hard to read. Having a clean, sharp story about who we are feels, well, incredibly comforting. It makes this crazy, unpredictable social world feel a lot more legible.
Think of the spread of this term kind of like forwarding a short voice note. Online, long, highly nuanced explanations usually lose out to short, snappy ideas. A voice note might be incomplete. It might leave out a massive amount of context, but man, it travels fast. The Sigma label became popular not because it's some scientifically proven fact of nature, but simply because the internet generously rewards simple, catchy social shortcuts.
Chapter 3. The Hierarchy Had It. Now think back to a school canteen queue. Even before anyone says a single word, people automatically notice who moves first, who gets noticed, who waits patiently, and who seems completely unbothered by the whole thing. We naturally and immediately map out who leads and who follows. Honestly, the alpha, beta, and sigma labels, they're really just modern attempts to put names to that invisible queue we all intuitively feel.
Notice the core mechanism at play here. When someone says, "I don't follow the crowd," they're really just expressing independence. But when they elevate that to, "I am outside the hierarchy," they are suddenly claiming status without having to actually compete for it. Saying, "I am different by nature," turns a simple behavior into a deep, fixed identity. And saying others just don't get me, well, that creates this emotional armor against feeling left out. So the story isn't just describing how someone acts. It's actively organizing their entire self-image.
But here's the truth. Social variety is completely 100% normal. Think of human interaction like a giant orchestra. A trumpet, a cello, and a snare drum all play vastly different roles. None of them are more human or better than the others. They just produce totally different effects. In the exact same way, it's completely fine to influence things quietly instead of leading visibly. You really don't need a special ranking system to validate that you prefer playing the cello over the trumpet, you know?
That brings us to Chapter 4, where the concept breaks.
So it breaks right here at this specific split. On one side, we have the descriptive version. Some people are independent and don't fit conventional roles. That is totally ordinary, it's true, and it's completely uncontroversial. But on the other side, we have the identity claim. Independence proves they are a special, superior kind of man, and that is exactly where things get slippery. It's the danger of taking a real healthy trait like independence and basically weaponizing it into this permanent, ranked identity that implies you literally don't need anyone else.
The biggest problem with that kind of rigid identity is that human behavior is incredibly context-sensitive. Think of it like a multi-speed fan. It doesn't run at the exact same speed all the time. It changes depending on the heat, the power, and what you actually need in the moment. Humans operate the exact same way. You might be reserved and quiet at a party full of strangers, but then highly assertive and vocal during a meeting at work. We just aren't made of one fixed, unchanging operating mode.
And this is exactly why critics completely reject this whole alpha, beta, sigma taxonomy. First, as we just talked about, human behavior is way too contextual to just be shoved into a single box. Second, the hierarchy itself is super shaky. It's built on social intuition, not actual scientific data or clear measurements. And third, the label often ends up becoming a self-serving shield. It takes the beautiful, complex flexibility of a human being and just freezes it into an oversimplified, ego-defending box. It turns social difficulty into a point of pride rather than something to maybe be examined.
All right, our final section, Chapter 5, Fact versus Fiction.
Notice the massive gap here between observation and interpretation. On the left side, we have actual, real facts. Some people prefer independence, some dislike hierarchy games, or some are just naturally private. But look at what the label adds over on the right. Therefore, they belong to a special type. Therefore, they are superior. Do you see it? It takes a perfectly ordinary fact and stacks a highly flattering, totally unproven story right on top of it.
The confusion almost always happens because we slide between three different things without even noticing. A fact is just describing a behavior. A type is claiming a stable category, and an identity, that's telling a whole fictional story about who someone fundamentally is. Once you recognize that people are using a simple fact to build this grand identity, you're completely free from being trapped inside the label. You can finally just look at it objectively.
Which leads us to the ultimate takeaway. Sigma is not a hidden human species. It is a story people use to make independence feel like identity. It's a cultural story. Honestly, it's much like a modern myth that helps us explain ourselves to a very complicated world, but it's definitely not a scientific law of nature.
So, as we wrap things up, I want to leave you with this provocative thought to carry with you. The next time you encounter one of these catchy internet psychology labels, and you will, ask yourself, what part of this idea is describing real observable behavior, and what part is just a flattering story layered on top? Learning to spot the difference is an absolute game changer. Thanks so much for exploring this with me today. Keep asking those great questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.